BJ Penn wasn't always a UFC Hall of Famer and a two-division world champion. Before that, he was a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu world champion, and before that, he was an 18-year-old white belt who, in the time it takes some people to earn a blue belt, would go from an absolute beginner to a black belt world champion. Can anybody really get that good that fast? And if so, can you get that good that fast? Well, let's find out, and let's take a look at the life of BJ Penn. So before we get too deep into the BJ Penn story, I just want to make 2 points. Number one, I'm not going to focus too much on BJ's UFC career. We're going to touch on it briefly, but for the purposes of this video, I'm more focused on his jiu-jitsu. Number two, I know BJ can be a controversial figure, and I think that's part of what makes him so interesting. And I have my thoughts about BJ, but I'm going to save them for the end. I don't want to tell you his story while you're thinking about my opinions, and I don't want to potentially sway your opinions. I'd rather just tell you the story and let you form your own conclusions, and then I'll give you my thoughts towards the end. Sound good? Cool. Let's go. BJ was born on December 13th, 1978 in Hawaii. BJ is actually short for Baby J, which is something you would know if you've ever heard Mike Goldberg call one of his fights. Baby J is a nickname coming from the fact that he is the youngest J.D. Penn in his family, and he shares that name with his father and his 2 older brothers, sort of like George Foreman and his 5 sons all named George. BJ's only younger brother is named Reagan, and I've always kind of felt bad for Reagan that maybe he felt left out of the name club. BJ was a rambunctious teen, to put it mildly, and he enjoyed his fair share of street fights, and that's something that's going to come back later on in his life. He comes from a wealthy family, and when a new neighbor named Tom Callis moved in, it would be the start of BJ's jiu-jitsu journey. Tom was a traditional martial arts practitioner, and he was just getting into jiu-jitsu, but he didn't have anyone to train with on the island. So he put up flyers looking for wrestlers or judoka or fighters to come train with him, and BJ's dad encouraged his boys to take Tom up on his offer. And as a side note here, Tom Callis is actually Keenan Cornelius' stepfather. According to Tom, he was traveling to California, and he invited BJ to go with him. And this is when BJ first met Ralph Gracie at his school. When BJ graduated high school, his father told him that when the fall came, if BJ wasn't enrolled in a school or working a job, he was moving to California to study under Ralph. The summer came and went, and before BJ knew it, he was on a plane on his way to California. BJ lived as if he was in college, but his college was jiu-jitsu. He trained all day, every day, and he lived his life like a college student. According to BJ, jiu-jitsu was an obsession, and he couldn't stop thinking about it even when he was not at the school. He quickly earned a nickname, the Prodigy. Outside of his insane mental ability to see a technique, know a technique, and learn a technique almost immediately, BJ has some incredible physical gifts as well. His flexibility is something that I would kill to have. This video is BJ scratching his head with his foot. That's unreal. And here he is putting his foot behind his head with no hands. This video shows his athleticism. That's a 3-foot pool he just jumped out of. And if I had $1 for every time I tried to jump out of a pool or tried to scratch my ear with my foot, I wouldn't have to save for my daughter's college anymore. In 1998, just 1 year after moving to California, BJ competed at the World Championships as a blue belt, and he came in 2nd place. He had been competing and dominating regionally on the West Coast, and his desire to compete was only intensified when he competed at the Worlds. And in Brazil, he could see the level of competition that he wasn't getting in California. When BJ was a purple belt, he decided to compete in a judo tournament, seemingly to show his jiu-jitsu dominance over judo. Although it's been reported that he now regrets this, and while I was doing research for this, I couldn't find any actual source that says he regrets it. There's a lot of people who say they heard him on a podcast, and that he said on the podcast that he now regrets it, but I haven't heard that myself, so grain of salt and all that. This video gets circulated every once in a while, and it usually falsely claims BJ was a white belt. He is wearing a white belt in the video, but that's just because he holds no official rank in judo. But either way, BJ easily handles black belts in judo with only about 1.5 to 2 years of training, and he won the tournament. And so that Prodigy nickname was no joke. BJ never got over the level of talent that he saw in Brazil when he competed as a blue belt back in 1998, and this is where the first bit of controversy comes in BJ's life. I read a few accounts of what exactly happened, but they all end the same way. BJ left Ralph and he moved to Brazil to train. Some accounts say BJ wanted to go because Ralph refused to promote BJ when BJ thought that he deserved it. And some accounts say BJ asked Ralph if he could go back to the Worlds again, and Ralph said no, so BJ went anyway. Either way, Half didn't take too kindly to it, and he called BJ a snake and a traitor. And years later, when BJ was fighting MMA, he fought Renzo Gracie, who's Half's brother. They officially reconciled in 2015, and BJ posted a photo on Instagram of him visiting Half's school, but this was bad blood for a long time between these two, and they genuinely did not like each other. When BJ moved to Brazil, he trained under Andre Pederneiras at Nova União. He had a chance to train with some of the best guys in the world, and in 1999, he competed as a brown belt at the World Championships, and he earned a bronze medal. And in 2000, just 16 months after leaving Half Gracie, Andre Pederneiras promoted BJ to black belt. A few short weeks later, BJ competed as a black belt at the World Championships, and he won in a stacked division. He was the first American to ever win a gold medal at black belt at the World Championships. That's an incredible accomplishment. Even more incredible is that he beat some of the best in the world after only training for a little more than 3 years. BJ said this was his proudest moment, and he values this World Championship in 2000 over even his UFC world titles. According to BJ, this is the official timeline. He received his blue belt after 6 months of training, 1 year and 6 months from blue to purple, 8 more months to receive his brown belt from Andre Pederneiras, and 8 more months from brown to black. This 3 years and 4 months is one of the fastest legitimate promotions to black belt ever. And no one can say that it wasn't well deserved, considering as a black belt for only a few weeks, BJ won a world championship. But I am sure that there will be people in the comments who will disagree. BJ quickly moved to MMA after winning the world championship in 2000, and his MMA career is where even more controversy comes in. He was the prodigy in MMA as well, and he would go on to win championship belts in 2 divisions. He had a public feud with the UFC when he left to fight in other organizations against the wishes of the UFC. This should sound familiar. Somebody doesn't want BJ to do something, and BJ just does what he wants. BJ claims in his book that money was also a factor, and he did not feel like he was being paid adequately by the UFC. These fights outside the UFC are where the legend of BJ really grows, as his mentality of, I don't care who it is, I'll fight anyone, led him to fights against much bigger opponents. When he fought Renzo, like I mentioned before, it was at 185 pounds. He also fought Rodrigo Gracie at 185 pounds, and he lost a decision to the future UFC light heavyweight champion Lyoto Machida, and Machida in that fight outweighed BJ by 35 pounds. BJ has said that his goal was to win a belt in every weight class. He wanted to win the welterweight belt, then move up to middleweight, win the belt there, and then move up again. And I guess just continue to move up over and over and over until I guess he was heavyweight champion. It never obviously happened, but that's just the mentality that BJ had. He thought that he could beat anyone, no matter how big they were, because of his jiu-jitsu. BJ and the UFC eventually reconciled, and he returned to the promotion and eventually went on an unbelievable run, capturing the lightweight championship. And he reigned there as the champion for many years. Anderson Silva said at one point that he viewed BJ as the greatest fighter ever. The knock against BJ's MMA career was always the perception that he didn't train hard and would often show up not in shape. It seems that when you're a prodigy and everything comes really easy to you, the thought of working extremely hard doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, when you're showing up on no training and beating everyone anyway, why kill yourself in the gym? There's always seemed to be 2 BJs, the motivated BJ and the unmotivated BJ. Both were killers, but only one was able to beat the best guys in the sport. And I know I'm glossing over a lot of MMA history right now, but as I said before, BJ's UFC career isn't the main focus of this video. BJ has had his share of issues outside of fighting, and this is the source of even more controversy. In 2015, he was arrested in Hawaii and charged after a brawl outside of a bar, and his estranged girlfriend and the mother of his children has alleged that he was abusive and that he has an ongoing drug problem. In June 2019, BJ fought a bouncer outside of a bar, and in August 2019, video circulated of BJ in a confrontation on the street, and he's daring a man to hit him, and then when the guy does hit him, BJ crumples to the ground. More video of this altercation shows BJ coming back and pounding on the guy while he's got the man's back. I'm not showing either of these videos right now because I don't really think it's appropriate, but if you really want to see what happened, you can find them pretty easily. These issues were happening while BJ was still fighting for the UFC, and he was hanging on to a career for way too long. He hasn't won a fight since he beat Matt Hughes in 2010. He's on a 7-fight losing streak. The UFC released him in early September of 2019 after the most recent bar fight video came out, and it's probably for the best. I said at the beginning I'd save my thoughts on BJ for the end, and here they are. I love BJ Penn as a grappler and a fighter right up until around 2011. If he stopped fighting after he lost to Nick Diaz and Roy McDonald back to back, I still think he goes down as the best to ever do it. And we can have that greatest of all time debate in the comments. His black belt in 3 years after having no previous experience and then going on to win a world championship in such a short period of time is incredible. As a person, he's clearly had some issues and he's not handled them the right way, to say the least. I wish he didn't fight people in the street. I really hope the allegations of abuse and drug use aren't true. And I'll always wonder how good he could have been if he loved to train for fights, not just love to win them. I've wanted him to stop fighting for years, but every time it's announced he's going to fight again, I find myself getting excited and thinking maybe this is the time that he can pull it off. Maybe this is the time he can get that last win that he's searching for. I truly wish BJ would return to competitive jiu-jitsu, do some super fights, compete at EBI or fight to win, compete in the Masters divisions at tournaments. I'd be all for it. I think the things he's accused of are despicable and inexcusable, and no matter how good your jiu-jitsu is, you shouldn't be that type of person. I think that's what makes him such a complex person. I want to be a fan so badly, and I was for so many years, but his personal life makes that hard. So how can a person get a black belt in 3 years? Well, it seems pretty simple. First, you have to live your life like jiu-jitsu is college, and you have to train for 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day. When you're not training, you need to be thinking about training. You have to compete as much as possible and make sure you always medal. It doesn't hurt if you have crazy athleticism and flexibility, and you should also be able to perfect a move that you saw demonstrated just one time. So basically, if you just be a prodigy, you should have your black belt in no time. For the rest of us, we'll just keep training as hard as we can and hope to get as good as BJ at some point in our lives, no matter how long that takes. I really hope you enjoyed that look into BJ Penn's jiu-jitsu life. He's for sure an interesting character in our sport, and he's accomplished a lot in a very short time, but he's not without his controversy as well. I have some other videos looking at all parts of jiu-jitsu, more than just what happens on the mat. Check them out and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.